You are only as strong as your weakest lift. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about this concept, and it's one that I agree with from an athletic perspective, and I'll even agree with it from a muscular development perspective, that irrespective of what your goals are, it's important to remember that just like the old expression, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, you are only as strong as your weakest lift. And I don't mean that necessarily in terms of pounds or kilos, as in, obviously your weakest lift. That's how strong you are as far as the weight there. But what I mean is your strength relative in your different ratios on your different exercises. And when it comes down to muscular development, or it comes down to muscle imbalances and strength imbalances that could affect you negatively in terms of injuries, balance, and just being the best that you can be, I think it's important for us to remember that we are only as strong as our weakest lift. Now, I will go so far as to later extrapolate that into accessory movements and assistance movements and all these other things. But I think this is something that people need to remember who aren't even going to be athletes. Let's say you just want to be fit, you want to be healthy, you want to be jacked. Maybe you just want to look better and feel better. I think this still holds true for you too. It holds true for you also. And the reason for that is when you go look at things like the classic aesthetics, golden era type bodybuilding. Again, I'm not a bodybuilder, not a big fan of bodybuilding, particularly modern bodybuilding, but there is something to be said for that classic era. There's something to be said for it because they had ideals that came out of older philosophies like ancient Greece and Rome and the statues and these concepts of what a balanced or an ideal male body should look like, right? And these people had their own views on it. Some of the great minds that founded Western civilization had their own views on it. And I think from maybe an artistic perspective, they were right. But what you find is that in order for most people to achieve that sort of physique, obviously they have to have a low body fat. That's usually a prerequisite because those sort of physiques are all lean. So there's a lot of guys out here who would look a lot better if they were just leaner. Hell, I'm a perfect example. You look at me standing there. I don't have perfect muscle balance, but I've also got weaknesses. But by that same token, if I was, 20 pounds leaner, probably people would think that I looked better, right? They would think that I look more aesthetic. Let's just be realistic here. Body fat matters, but strength balance matters. Muscular balance matters, and size equals strength. And if you have weak links somewhere in your strength, if you have a basic movement pattern or a big exercise that you were weak at relative to your others, your muscularity is not going to be proportionate. And I don't mean just the big three. Look at me doing weighted chin-ups right there. I don't mean just the big three. I don't mean the squat, bench, deadlift. I mean various pulls. How about a chin-up or a pull-up? How about a standing overhead press? Right, those are my big five. If people ask me what are the big five that everyone should develop as a base, squat, bench, deadlift, standing press, weighted chin-up or a weighted pull-up, right? All of those are what you're going to build your base with. That's the foundation of your overall size and strength should come from those. And I'm not saying that it has to be those. That's what I use, and that's the standards I set personally. And there's a lot of reasons why I picked those, but that's a separate topic, isn't it? That doesn't have to be it. You could be talking about a weighted dip instead of a bench press. You might be talking about a front squat instead of a back squat. You might be talking about a box squat instead of a back squat. That's fine. You could be talking about a sumo deadlift or a deficit deadlift. Some sort of hip hinge. But you guys get the idea. A big, basic movement pattern that follows one of these natural movement patterns for the human body, because that's what they are. These are natural movement patterns. If you're weak, if you're disproportionately weak at any of them, that's a problem. Meaning you're nowhere near your muscle balance potential in terms of your size if you have an imbalance there. You're also predisposed to a higher rate of injury. All right, if you're only good at the squat, bench, and deadlift, I'll say that as a power lifter, I'll say that to other power lifters. If all you can do is squat, bench, and deadlift, but let's say you do suck at those other two, the chin-up, the overhead press, things like that, well, maybe your strength isn't balanced. Maybe you're predisposing yourself to injuries. Right? Maybe you are predisposing yourself to injuries. Maybe you aren't as balanced as you should be. So I would say to anyone out there, what all of us tend to do, we tend to favor what we're best at. For me, historically, what am I usually best at? Deadlift. You guys have always been, my deadlift has always been disproportionately high over the years on YouTube. And that's why I'm not giving it quite as much focus as I am some other things. I'm doing more effort into all of my pressing, squatting, things like that, over my deadlift these days, because I know that I can always get my deadlift back super strong when I want. I'm training the deadlift, but I'm also working on the hook grip and stuff, right? And I'm going to let my deadlift coast, because eventually I know once my squat is back past 500, and my bench and my press and my chin-ups are all good, I'll be able to shoot my deadlift past 600 again, right? I know historically that'll be within reach. So I'm not even that worried about it. But it's my favorite exercise. It's my absolute favorite exercise of all time. But I also know that I get disproportionately strong, easy at it. I don't need to work at it as much for that reason. Realistically, we all need to work on our weak points. We need to work on our weak points. But let's examine that another step further. Because let's assume that it's not just that. How about your accessory movements? You know, your various accessory and assistance movements. And this is something strength coaches have noted over the years who work with different lifters, that they can tell how strong their lifters are based on accessory movements. In other words, if you take two guys and they have one of them has a certain squat and a deadlift, and you go have another guy do accessories with them, like a weighted glute ham raise, right? A weighted glute ham raise or a floor press. And you take the new guy and he's 20% weaker at the glute ham raise than the stronger guy. That stronger guy probably considerably out squats and out deadlifts him. So the same could be true there. How about your floor press? How about the weighted dip? What if you have some of these movements that you go realize some of these really, really fantastic accessory movements or assistance movements that are out there? What if you are disproportionately weak at one of them that you're doing? Well, maybe you should get strong at it. Right? Maybe you should get strong at it, because that represents a potential weak movement pattern. That represents a potential weak movement pattern. It doesn't just have to be even your primary lifts. You could be looking through your accessory lifts. And I think that's where it is useful to compare ourselves to other people. That's where it's useful to use strength and conditioning charts. A lot of people say stuff like, well, you shouldn't compare yourself to others. I'm sorry, that's a weak mentality. That's a weak mentality. You want to get strong, you damn well better compare yourself to others. And you better compare yourself to others in the same metric. I don't care what someone's touch and go bench is when you're comparing it to your pause bench, right? Because it doesn't matter. But looking at these different metrics and looking at your buddy, if you got a friend who maybe benches a little more than you want to catch him on the bench, but then you go look at an accessory movement and he is way better than you at an accessory movement. All right. Let's say he only outbenches you by 30 pounds, but he beats you by 50 or 60 pounds on, say, the floor press. Well, maybe you need to get your floor press up. Maybe that will resolve your weakness. I'm throwing that out there as another factor. Same thing, maybe your deadlift and stuff is lacking, but you realize you really suck at weighted chin-ups or pull-ups. Well, maybe your lats are weak. Now, it could be your biceps that are weak, but maybe your lats in general are weak. Maybe that's what's holding you back. So maybe you should get stronger at the pull-up or the chin-up or the barbell row. Maybe it'll help your deadlift. So that's what I mean by we're only as strong as our weakest lift. Yes, we could say that in terms of the strength and conditioning charts, and we should be looking at what do you squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, right? We should be looking at that. If you have something on different parts of the chart, you're advanced on two lifts and you're an intermediate on the other two, well, you know where your weaknesses are. You need to work on those lifts so you're an intermediate more when you look at any of those charts. All right? You probably do need to work at those. But by that same token, the same thing can be said of your various accessory movements and assistance movements or other exercises. The weighted chin-up, the barbell row, maybe the floor press, the weighted dip, the glute ham raise. Any of these. Because if you're weak at any of these big movements, right, even these more assistance type movements, accessory type movements, if you're really weak at one of them, that represents a strength weakness. That represents a muscle imbalance potentially that maybe it would be in your best interest to correct. Maybe you need to put more effort into the thing that you are weakest at to improve your overall strength. so that you can be all around strong. It would be a good idea. That's what I would recommend. I would recommend that to everyone. We need to be strong at everything. And that's what you need to remember at the end of the day. When one guy runs around and they're only strong at 1 or 2 lifts, and then they try to pretend that that makes them stronger than other people, that's laughable. That's laughable. Because if you're only stronger than someone else at one exercise and they beat you on 3 other big movements, you're not stronger than them. You're not stronger than them at all, because you have weaker links than they do. And you should probably fix those. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.